All right, so we have this piecewise function, which is f of x, which is equal to, and these are the two pieces here. It's negative x squared plus 2, and this is for x less than 1. And we have 2x plus 3 for x greater than or equal to 2. So let's find or evaluate these three function values, right? F of negative 2. So what does this mean, right? Now, once again, we're not going to plug in negative 2 here, negative 2 here, and you're not going to give me these two answers, right? We should only have one answer because that's what a function is. So then how do you determine which piece to plug it into? And that is determined by the restriction on the domain, right? Okay, so let's take a look. To evaluate f of negative 2, we have to determine does negative 2 fall into this domain or into this domain here. Okay. Well, negative 2 is certainly less than 1, right? Negative 2 is not greater than or equal to 2. Right, but negative 2 is less than 1, so to evaluate f of negative 2, we need to plug in negative 2 into this piece. Okay? Now be careful what your signs here, right? It's the negative of negative 2 squared plus 2. So that's negative 4 plus 2, which is equal to negative 2. Okay. Or what about f of 1? So similarly, we have to determine which piece this value of 1 falls into. Now you notice, well, wait a minute, 1 is not less than 1, okay? So we cannot evaluate 1 using this piece, but also, wait a minute, 1 is not greater than or equal to 2, so we can't evaluate 1 using this piece, so what does that mean then? It actually means that for this particular function, f of 1 does not exist, okay? Because 1 does not fall into any of these restricted domains. What about f of 3? Okay, so 3 falls into this domain, right? 3 is certainly greater than or equal to 2. Okay, so to evaluate f of 3, we're going to plug in 3 into this function. So 2 times 3 plus 3, that should give us 9. Now what about the sketch here? Let's try to sketch this guy. Okay. Now we know that the first piece, right? The first piece is a quadratic function, right? It's negative x squared plus 2. So what can we conclude about this function? Well, it's shifted up 2 units, right? It's shifted up 2 units. But the negative x squared tells us that we are going to move down. Okay? Or not move down, but it's going to be pretty much an upside down u, right? It's going to be the upside down u. Okay? So we're going to draw the graph. Okay, it looks a little something like this. We're going to draw an upside down u. But wait a minute. Okay, what happens here? You notice that we can only draw this graph for values of x that are less than 1. Well, okay, here's x equals to 1, right? So what does that mean? It means that we cannot draw the whole graph here, right? We cannot draw the whole u. Essentially, we have to stop or cut it off here when x is equal to 1. So I'm going to draw an open circle here because x is strictly less than 1. What about this piece? We want to draw this piece of the function for values of x that are greater than or equal to 2. Okay? Now, this is a graph of a line, right? So this line has a y-intercept of 3 and a slope of 2, right? So now, you got to be careful with this because we can draw the line. Okay, we can draw the line. Here's the y-intercept, slope of 2, right? We go up that way, but okay, we essentially want to start the graph for values of x that are greater than or equal to 2 only. Okay? So we can certainly plug into 2 here, right? So f of 2 is going to equal 7, right? So when we have, for this graph, right? For this graph, at 2, the y value will be 7, and we should certainly draw a closed circle there. Okay? And then we're just going to go up 2 units over 1 unit. We know that f of 3 is 9. Okay, and we can draw this line, and it should go that way. So the first piece of the graph is a quadratic, right? So that tells us that the graph will be a parabola. It's an upside down parabola that stops here at x when x is 1. Okay, we draw an open circle here because x is strictly less than 1. Okay. The second piece is a linear function, so we know that it's going to be a line, but we only draw this graph or this line for values of x that are greater than or equal to 2. So at 2, we can certainly plot this point, okay, and then draw the line going this way. Notice that here we have a closed circle.